Like the David Bowie and Queen song, Who's Under the Pressure? Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Last one on the face of the planet. It's a great day to be alive. We've got college football to talk about. Big Ten tiers today. If you tuned in to the Tuesday show, we did the SEC tiers, taking our show out to Big Ten country and give you a little insight as to how we're processing the Big Ten. We'll start with that, but we're also now going to do a little pressure cooker rating system as to some contenders in the college football world for a national championship with first-year starting quarterbacks. Who of those quarterbacks is feeling the most pressure? We'll give you a rating for each of those guys. We'll go all over the country, man. We'll talk a little Gunnar Stockton. We got some summer propaganda from Lenor Sellers. It's a wonderful time in the college football calendar. The preview magazines are hitting your local Barnes & Noble, your local gas station. You're starting to see some more what's the right way to say this? Some more potential wagers hitting your favorite website as to where you can maybe lose or win some money on college football. Regardless, we're glad you're here. It's college football, nothing but college football on this show, The Hard Count. Quick note, if you are not yet following on the social platforms, Instagram, Twitter, at JD PicKell, get at me on there. Great place for us to interact. Great place for us to do some more content that we don't do on the long-form show. So get at us on there. We appreciate you in advance for that. One more disclaimer. We have a voicemail extravaganza coming up next week on this show, The Hard Count. So if you have not yet given us a call, 629-888-3931. Again, check out that lower third by Cato right there. Little Sailor Juice in the lower third. We'd love to see it. Give us a call. Give us your college football takes, concerns, whatever it is. College football therapy. We're having it here on this show. Give us a voicemail. Leave it at right around like 30-ish seconds so we can make sure we get it on the show in a orderly fashion. But that'll be next week. Give us a call so you can get your voice featured on the show. All right, let's waste no more time and start with our tiers for the Big Ten Conference in 2025. Same disclaimer, not a rating system, not a ranking system. This is how I'm processing the Big Ten ahead of this upcoming college football season. Let's start with the base layer of this whole tier system, and that is throw the blinders on. Purdue, you're a tier of 1 right now. You don't get better in life worrying about anybody else, right? You focus on you do your thing. Don't let them talk to you about what last year was. You turn the page, focus on yourself. If you're worried about Maryland or Wisconsin or Ohio State or anyone else, that's not your race to run. Run your race, throw the blinders on, work on staying in your lane, and we'll be in good shape. Purdue in, again, the first tier of 1, throw the blinders on. Next one is momentum hunting for Northwestern and Maryland. Northwestern now got themselves a new quarterback, and they won Preston Stone. Now, Preston Stone, this time last year on this show, we're saying, hey, he could be a dude now. Could be a dude for the folks out there at SMU. Season went how it went, and Kevin Jennings ended up winning the job and giving them a better chance during the course of the season. But doesn't mean he can't still spin it. Does he create some momentum for Northwestern? I think it's possible. Then for Maryland, here's who your first 3 games are against, all right? FAU, NIU, Towson. Can we go 3-0 before we play Wisconsin? I think it's possible. And in the world of college football, momentum is a dangerous thing. Can we get some momentum for those teams, Northwestern and Maryland, both momentum hunting? Now, this next year is kind of fun. We got a couple of teams now that I don't know that anyone's picking to win the Big Ten or to make the college football playoff. But I look at UCLA and Michigan State. I think they're wild cards. And I think they're wild cards because they have a wild card at quarterback. Like Nico Iamaleava, now famously or maybe infamously at UCLA, was still a 5-star player. He's back home. Some good weather. Deshaun Foster coached him. Tino Sinceri, QB guru, sniper mentality, is running the offense for them out there. Maybe, just maybe, he unlocks that 5-star potential within Nico Iamaleava, and maybe, just maybe, UCLA, they get cooking a little bit. Aiden Shiles at Michigan State, 4-star guy out of high school, follows Jonathan Smith from Oregon State to East Lansing, which maybe, just maybe, is able to live up to that potential, live up to that hype, and maybe Michigan State ends up getting something going. Now, this next year is teams that I think if you were to get a poster as to what Big Ten football is all about, it'd probably feature Iowa, Rutgers, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. It's gritty over pretty for those teams, dude. It may not be a outfit that is must-see television from an entertainment product, but if you love blocking, tackling, fullbacks, special teams, converting 3rd and short, Dare I say 4th and 1, little spider 3-wide banana. These are your teams, all right? I think that all of them will be tough outs. I don't know, again, that any of them are going to be Big Ten title contenders. You could convince me for Iowa. Wisconsin, I think, is actually maybe the sneakiest of this whole group with Jeff Grimes now back, bringing the blue-collar sort of offense to them with that wide zone approach. But of that group, I think they're probably all just kind of similar to the tough and scrappy group we had in the SEC. I think that's kind of what you would say for that group there in Big Ten country. This next group is the tier that I would call I could see it. Because I could see it with Michigan, USC, Nebraska, Washington, all finding their way into that top tier in the Big Ten this year. And by nature of how the College Football Playoff Committee seems to see this conference, and rightfully so, I think any of those teams could find their way backdoor style into the College Football Playoff. They're all, to me, one variable away from being a true contender to win the Big Ten. Like if Bryce Underwood's the guy at Michigan, and he's just a dude from game one. We're talking about him a little bit later in the show as well. What's Michigan? The defense is going to be great. Feel good about the run game. And you have a quarterback that elevates all of that, makes the whole thing go. Michigan could definitely be a 10-win team. 10 wins gets you in the College Football Playoff. USC, if Jaden Mayava, if he elevates, and that defense stays as good as they were last year, I don't even need them to elevate. I need them to just be as good as they were last year. And Jaden Mayava is a Lincoln Riley brand quarterback. Okay, USC's in business. Nebraska, Dylan Raiola, same thing. Washington, Damon Williams, same thing. They're all one variable away. As we talk this through, I think that one variable for most of these schools is at quarterback. So I could see it with all of them. Quarterback going to be paramount for all 4 of those schools in terms of their Big Ten title and College Football Playoff aspirations. The next tier, I've labeled the floor is yours. I'm willing to listen. Indiana, Illinois, the floor is yours, man. You both, respectively, put on tremendous performances a year ago in the 2024 campaign. Illinois, your top 3 in returning production. Indiana, Kurt Cignetti, far be it for me to bet against Kurt Cignetti. I'm not 100% sure I'm picking you to win the Big Ten, but I am 100% sure that it's going to be on you to make the case for yourself in this upcoming season. Luke Altmaier's back for Illinois. Brett Bielema, that attitude of that football team at Illinois is going to be the same. The floor is yours. Convince us. Make your case for both Indiana and Illinois, respectively. This is a tier of one team that's up next, and that is Penn State. I have them under the make them believe tier. And it's funny, I put myself in the category of them today in this discussion because I've been openly skeptical about Penn State, not because of James Franklin, not because of the big game James thing people like to, poke fun at and, do the whole social media thing and make a punchline about. I'm in the make them believe camp around Penn State in the sense that I am curious of the roster talent level relative to what it's going to take to win the Big Ten here in 2025. Got yourself in that game last year. Can you push yourself even further through the finish line to be a Big Ten kind of champion? Because this is kind of the year to do it, right? Or at least it feels that way. Ohio State, new quarterback. Oregon, new quarterback. Michigan, new quarterback. Penn State brings back their quarterback, the most sure thing in the conference, in Drew Aller. They bring back both dudes in the backfield. You have to believe now with what Penn State's done on the defensive side of the football. I know it's not Jim Knowles, but I think they're still going to, or not Jim, it's not Tom Allen. It's going to be Jim Knowles running the show, which is a good deal for them in Happy Valley. I feel like you're in good shape. I feel good about Penn State, but in this specific instance, I need you to kick the door down and make us all believe that you are who you could potentially be here in 2025. Now, the top tier for me in this conference is a tier of 2 teams. It's Ohio State, it's Oregon. I'm labeling this tier reload. That's what it is every single year for these teams, man. I'm not worried about returning production. I'm not really that worried about quarterback, whether that's right or wrong to say. I'm not that worried about the staffs. Every single year, as far as I can gather, right now at least, these 2 teams will be in the top tier when it comes to roster talent in the conference. And so what that means is I think they're both going to be in a spot to win the conference every year, both be in a spot to make the college football playoff every year. And also I think they have 2 of the best coaches in the conference with Dan Lanning and Ryan Day. Dan Lanning won the conference last year, his first year in the deal, and Ryan Day finally got up monkey off his back, and he won the national championship. I don't have a lot of questions as it pertains to the personality and the DNA of either of those teams. So every single year, it's just going to be reload the roster talent, new names, that's fine, but the talent will still be top tier, still be 5-star, and they'll both still be in contention to win the conference, probably both be favorites to win the conference more often than not. So to recap it for you, how we're processing the Big Ten as it stands here right now, our Big Ten tiers. Purdue, throw the blinders on. Do you, boo-boo. Don't worry about anybody else. Momentum hunting, Northwestern and Maryland. Quarterback-driven wild cards with Nico and Aiden Childs, both respectively at UCLA and Michigan State. Gritty over pretty, the name of the game in the Big Ten. Iowa, Rutgers, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I could see it for Michigan, USC, Nebraska, and Washington. Indiana, Illinois. The floor is yours, man. Make your case. Last year, you got our attention. This year, make your case. The floor is yours. Now, Penn State, make us, make me, make them believe. Ohio State and Oregon, they're just reloading. That's how it sits right now in Big Ten country. Love to see it, man. Appreciate y'all being dialed in to the live show, to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, man. Go ahead, leave a review. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast feed or follow the podcast feed on Spotify if that's how you get down. But we appreciate y'all being a part of this show. So far we've gone through SEC tiers and Big Ten tiers. Just so you know, now we're going to slow down a little bit. We'll hit one of the two, either ACC or Big 12 tiers next week. And then after next week, we'll do another tier, whichever tier we haven't done yet of those two conferences. And then if y'all want more when it comes to discussing other tiers in the world of college football, we will absolutely do that. So it is on you to tell us what you want, and we appreciate y'all being so proactive and giving us feedback. So we talked about our tiers, but let's move to a ratings. I want to talk about when it comes to contenders to win the national championship. Where does the pressure sit with new quarterbacks of those contenders? Because it's funny, man. You look across the world of college football, a lot of these teams that we would give the label to as favorites to win the national championship, I mean, it's a fair label to give, but a lot of them are starting new individuals at quarterback. And we've talked a lot about these teams that will eventually, compete for national championships with returning production at quarterback. But I want to go through some of these guys that are new to the fold and I think have a good amount of pressure. Who's under the most pressure? We'll give you a rating for each of these guys, 1 through 10. 1 being no pressure at all, 10 being, the weight of the world is on their shoulders. Spoiler alert, there is nobody on this list with a 1. Nobody actually on this list lower than an 8.5. So we'll unpack that right now. Let's start off with Arch Manning. Arch Manning, I'm going to give him a pressure rating in the pressure cooker scale of a 9.4. Now, you could convince me this number should be higher for Arch Manning. I have a 9.4 because I think a lot of the pressure for him is external. Because it's the last name, it's the Texas logo, it's the fact that he sat for a couple of years, it's the fact that he's in a spot now where his task is to be better than the previous quarterback of Quinn Ewers, who got you to the semifinals 2 years in a row. But the reason why I don't have this higher than a 9.4 for Arch Manning, the reason why he's not in like the 9.8 category, 9.9 category, is because everything around him at Texas is actually in a pretty good spot for my money. They're going to run the football at a high level. C.J. Baxter, he's going to be back. Trey Wisner, he's back. They feel good internally about that O-line room, so therefore I'm not sweating that too much with what they lost up front. Defense is going to be the best in America for my money. Like, there's a lot around Arch Manning to where I don't think he has to be awesome from the, I shouldn't say from the jump, because from the jump you got to be good enough. You go to Columbus, Ohio. After Ohio State, you don't have to be Superman. You just got to get progressively better every single week and be ready to roll by November. So still, there's a lot of pressure on the guy for all those reasons we mentioned. Still a lot of pressure for him to eventually get to a college football playoff caliber kind of quarterback when you play for the college football playoff, when you get towards that first weekend in December and play for, hopefully for Texas fans, an SEC title. But I don't think the pressure is the most in the country. I think more pressure actually lays on a one Julian Sayin at Ohio State. I got his pressure rating in the pressure cooker at 9.6. And maybe you push back and say, JD, hey, they still got a lot of talent at Ohio State. They're still surrounded by a lot of other good pieces, right? Just what you said for Arch Manning. You could say the same thing for Julian Sayin. Why is there more pressure on a Julian Sayin? My feel on this is they're going to ask more of Julian Sayin at Ohio State than they asked of Will Howard last year. Because you lose Quinshon Judkins, you lose Trevian Henderson, you lose, Emeka Egbuka from that offense. And I think you're going to throw it more than you did last year with Will Howard. Like, Jeremiah Smith is the best player in college football. Spoiler alert, there is no game that Ohio State will play this year where it will ever be okay for Jeremiah Smith to have less than 5 catches. Whose responsibility is it going to be to get Jeremiah Smith the football? Brian Hartline? Okay, yes, of course. But right behind that, Julian Sayin. And so for Julian Sayin being a redshirt freshman being thrown into the fold for a team that just won the national championship last year, expectations are not going down. When you go to Ann Arbor, Michigan this upcoming season, there will be nobody with more pressure on them than a one Julian Sayin. So I have it at a 9.6. This Ohio State offense, too, it should be noted, there's no put it in cruise control and, just kind of take this thing 20 miles per hour down, the residential. It's like, no, put it in the carpool lane. We're going $120. I don't recommend that if you're, riding in the carpool lane, but I understand we've all been there. They're going to ask Julian Sayin to run this entire offense. There's no sheltering him when it comes to how they do things out there in Columbus. So I have him at a 9.6 out of 10 when it comes to the pressure rating for us right now for first-year starters at national title contenders. Now, staying in the Big Ten, I got Dante Moore for Oregon at a 9. And it's pretty clear, man. The Heisman finalist bar has been set in Eugene. Both Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix, the two quarterbacks before Dante Moore, went to New York City to have a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. What they didn't do was win a national championship. And with how the schedule is set up for Oregon, it's kind of a double-edged sword in this conversation around pressure because there is no Ohio State on the schedule for Oregon this year. I mean, Penn State's the toughest game you're going to have this year if you're Oregon. So in that way, there's less pressure when it comes to the competition you play, but in some way, shape, or form, less competition on your schedule should, in theory, translate to a better season for Oregon on the field. And the season last year for Oregon on the field was winning the Big Ten and undefeated regular season. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, in that way on Dante Moore. Physically, though, I don't think there's quite as much pressure for him as maybe the other quarterbacks ahead of him because there's nothing, I think, physically you're going to ask of him when it comes to making NFL throws or, throwing it 60, 70 yards in the air. They'll do things like that at Oregon, but a lot of what's going to be, asked of Dante Moore is going to be making the right decision, make the right throw on time, and get this thing rolling offensively when it comes to our tempo and momentum and all those things. So for me, Dante Moore, I'll put him in a 9. Not as much pressure as Arch Manning or Julian Sayin, but still 9 out of 10 on the pressure rating scale. Pretty substantial. Now, of this list, I think Gunnar Stockton has the least amount of pressure on him of contenders that are going to have first-year starting quarterbacks. I got Gunnar Stockton at an 8.5. And 8.5 maybe still sounds like it's a larger number just because it is still Georgia. By nature of this segment, it is still a team that's expected to go compete for a national championship. But when you're Georgia and you go self-scout this offseason and you look at yourself and what last year was, you're not looking at the quarterback position and saying, that held us back. Carson Beck, did he do some things that weren't great for you last year? Sure. We talk more about Gunnar Stockton later in the show as well. But, what kept Georgia from accomplishing their goals last year was what has elevated Georgia to national title level in previous seasons, which is the run game, stopping the run, defense, all those things. The game against Notre Dame for Gunnar Stockton, he was good enough. Can't fumble the football, but as a passer, he was good enough. Georgia didn't win that game because their leading rusher had 38 yards, and then Notre Dame was averaging 4.2 yards a carry. So it's not a Gunnar Stockton issue for Georgia. Again, more on this later, but my point in all of this is they're not asking Gunnar Stockton to go carry Georgia to the college football playoff. You're asking Gunnar Stockton to be the composer, run the show, get the ball to the right guy, make the right throws, run the football, be a leader, all those things. You're not going to ask him to light the world on fire. So 8.5 to me for Gunnar Stockton feels incredibly fair when it comes to the pressure on him here in 2025 over at Georgia. Now for Notre Dame starting quarterback, I'm assuming it's C.J. Carr. We're going to walk the line here and say it could be C.J. Carr or Kenny Minchey. Whoever starting at quarterback for Notre Dame, I think actually has more pressure than A1 Gunnar Stockton. I'm going to go put that pressure rating for them at 8.8. All right. Now, the reason why I have it higher for Notre Dame than I do for a Georgia is because I think that the Notre Dame offense in 2025 will require a little bit more pop to get back to where they were last year playing for a national championship. Riley Leonard, as good as he was on the ground, left a little bit to be desired through the air. And so if you want to go play for a national title again in 2025, and that's now the bar they've set for themselves there in South Bend, it's got to be better than 7.1 yards a pass. It's got to be better than that for 74th in college football. And so the pressure on Notre Dame's quarterback play, I don't think it's quite as intense as in September as it will be in November. By November or December, you have got to have Notre Dame offense at a spot to where you can go win some shootouts. You can go answer scores in a 2-minute drill kind of fashion. That's what I think is going to be required for Notre Dame. Defense is still going to be good enough, still have Jeremiah Love, still have a lot of weapons. So there's a lot built out around this quarterback to have success in A1 CJ Carr, I'm assuming. So that's why I don't have the number any higher. But Notre Dame, still a lot of pressure to perform. And again, similar to Texas and Arch Manning, it's got to elevate throughout the season and be at its best when its best is required there in the month of December and ultimately January for the folks at Notre Dame. Now, Alabama, to me, has the highest pressure rating of any first-year quarterback for a contender in 2025. I have Alabama's pressure rating at 9.8. And the reason why I feel this way, the standard hasn't changed in Tuscaloosa. Just because Nick Saban's on game day and not the sideline now, they still expect you to win national championships. We did our SEC tiers on Tuesday's show, and we had Alabama in our Don't Forget About Us tier. And everyone from Tuscaloosa is saying, JD, why are you disrespecting Bama like that? We still expect to go win national championships. And so you have that part of it, paired with the fact that everything else in Alabama is built out to go compete for a national championship. Receiver room, check. Offensive line, I think for the most part there, you would give it a pass and say check. Ryan Grubb, I mean, he's a guy that's played for a national championship under Kalen DeBoer when they were at Washington together, or coached for a national championship, I should say. The game plan for Alabama in what they want to do offensively is going through the quarterback. That's why you didn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish last year with Jalen Milroe. If you are going to compete for a national title, which is the expectation, it'll be on the quarterback to have a vertical presence, to be able to be explosive in that offense, and to get the ball to the playmakers on the perimeter. The defense, I think, is going to be good enough. Top 10 in the country last year, over half that production back. They think they're good enough there. For Alabama to play for a national championship, it's all on the quarterback. That's why I have the pressure rating for them as high as I do at a 9.8 out of 10. So let's recap it here. Arch Manning, I think the pressure rating for him right around 9.4. Julian Sain at 9.6. Dante Moore will give him a 9 even. Gunnar Stockton, 8.5. Notre Dame, 8.8. Alabama's quarterback, whether it's Ty Simpson, Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, whoever it is, it's going to be pressure. Pressure is privilege. Pressure makes diamonds, but it's pressure nonetheless, 9.8 out of 10. All right. So we talked about Gunnar Stockton for a second there. I want to rehash that a little bit. I think when you talk about Gunnar Stockton in the world of college football, or if you're just a Georgia fan in general, I think the conversations become a little bit warped around him. Because the easy math that people do in this time of the year in the college football world is, well, Georgia, they expect to play for a national championship, right? Great. What's the most important position in college football? Quarterback. Great. So then we sort of push ourselves, maybe unknowingly at times, into this question of, hey, is Gunnar Stockton good enough to take Georgia there? Is Gunnar Stockton the guy to get Georgia back to winning national championships? And while the question isn't unfair, I just think it's incomplete a little bit. Because what we just said in our previous segment, if you were Georgia and you're trying to reevaluate what went wrong last year and why you didn't, win the national championship, you're not going back and saying, man, Carson Beck, he held us back. Carson Beck didn't hold Georgia back last year. Now, was he great all the time? No. Did he have a number of turnovers you wish he didn't have? Absolutely. But Carson Beck wasn't, I don't think, like the only issue for Georgia a year ago. What we've said before is what kept Georgia from accomplishing what Georgia likes to accomplish is the same formula that allowed Georgia to win national championships, the run game. In both of Georgia's national championship years, back-to-back, they ran for right around 200 yards. Last year, Georgia didn't even sniff 150 throughout the course of the year when it comes to yards per game on the ground. What does that tell you? Georgia, whether it be an injury thing, whether it be an attitude thing, whether it be a personnel thing, they were not able to execute the formula that they want to execute. And so when you look at what the quarterback play has got to be for Gunnar Stockton, I don't think it's a situation where you got to ask him to go surpass what Carson Beck did last year when it comes to the numbers he put up. Like, I would actually argue, like, what would have happened for Georgia if Carson Beck didn't play as well as he did in certain spots? Like the game against Georgia Tech, he throws for 5 touchdowns. Took you 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech. If you lose to Georgia Tech, that game against Texas becomes a lot more important. I mean, the game against Mississippi State, I know it's Mississippi State, but like Mississippi State still scored 31 points. Carson Beck went for over 400 yards. I'm not saying Georgia loses that game if he doesn't do that, but I am saying like Carson Beck carried his fair share of the load last year for Georgia. It wasn't a thing where Carson Beck was like the again, the governor on what Georgia football was last year. So I think the question maybe in addition to is Gunnar Stockton what we need at Georgia is what are you going to ask of Gunnar Stockton next year at Georgia? Like the plan next year for Georgia is not Gunnar Stockton go throw for 300 yards, go do better numbers than Carson Beck. That's not the equation. And if it is the equation, you're in trouble because Carson Beck, to keep it a buck now, he is an NFL quarterback. Gunnar Stockton, I have no doubts in my mind, could be an NFL kind of quarterback, but like Gunnar Stockton probably doesn't have the first-round chops that a Carson Beck could potentially have if he has a good year at Miami. And that's not me dunking on Gunnar Stockton. That's just speaking to the whole situation right now at Georgia. So, again, the situation at Georgia, I think a lot of it's going to require what Gunnar Stockton gave you against Notre Dame. Now, you cannot fumble the football. What Gunnar Stockton did in that football game, I mean, can't fumble it twice, lose it once, can't happen. But Georgia lost the game to Notre Dame because their leading rusher had 38 yards and Notre Dame ran for 4.2 yards a carry. Gunnar Stockton, as a passer, threw for 234, a touchdown, no picks. Would like to see one more touchdown, but like 234, 2 touchdowns, 62% completion percentage, that's going to be good enough. It will, especially if the receiver room is as elevated as I think you hope it is in Athens, with which to be at the portal, which you're to the high school level. If your skill talent is able to maximize your passing game and elevate it a little bit more, Georgia's going to be in a much better spot here in 2025. All right, so it's not a Gunnar Stockton versus Carson Beck discussion. It is a Gunnar Stockton plus your defense, plus your skill players, plus your run game discussion, in my humble opinion. Now, here's my one other question I'll ask here as it pertains to the Gunnar Stockton situation at Georgia. I'm really interested to see what is Georgia's personality with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. Because we say this a lot on this show. Persona of your leadership translates to persona of your football team. And the persona of a Georgia football team, when they're winning national championships, what would you say it is? Physical, gritty, eat off the floor. They got that on T-shirts out there, and we love that. If you're watching in Athens, you got a T-shirt that says eat off the floor, send it our way. Doesn't that kind of feel like Gunnar Stockton? To me, it does. Seeing him, we say a lot, get murdered on the field against Texas, lose his helmet, like decapitated, and we're like, is he okay? Walks off the field, cool, he's good. Eat off the floor to me doesn't really sound like, Lambos. Doesn't really sound like TikTok. Doesn't really sound like Flash. That was kind of Carson Beck, wasn't it? And Aaron Murray said on this very show that there was maybe, just maybe, a little bit of a fragmentation in that locker room with how Carson Beck was perceived. Watching the game against Texas and against Notre Dame, there was 110% support of that Georgia football team behind number 14. So I'm wondering now, in the world of college football where it's tough to quantify everything and the box score doesn't tell the whole story and numbers don't always tell you what happened in a college football game, are the unquantifiables from Georgia behind a Gunnar Stockton maybe even better and allow Georgia to accomplish what they want to accomplish here in 2025? Because even in a down year, we've spent a long time throughout this segment telling you what Georgia wasn't last year, still won the SEC. Georgia's still in a year that where a lot of people say they weren't Georgia-ish, ourselves included, Kirby Smart's best coaching job, they still won the SEC. If they're more Georgia-ish here in 2025 behind Gunnar Stockton, I see no reason why that can't happen again, and we can't wait to watch how it all unfolds. Prediction season will be around the corner when we call our shots for our different conference title winners, but right now, Georgia, I think, is every right to that discussion as anyone else in the conference, with them being the winners of that conference a season ago. Now, let's stay in the SEC. Y'all, we do spring propaganda on this show, where different schools are putting out highlight tapes from practice, and you get little snippets from full 11-on-11 action. We're now in the summer months, and we love June and July in college football. Recruiting gets rolling, preview magazines, all those things, and we appreciate that. But when it comes to propaganda, it's a little bit harder to get our hands on, so God bless these quarterback trainers and these different aggregators that find these videos of these quarterbacks working out during the summer months. We got a Arch Manning propaganda on our most recent show. This show, we got some Lenor Sellers propaganda working out. Go ahead and check this out. Cato cut this up. Look at my guy just spinning the pill like a shady pharmacist. That throw right there. If he makes that throw consistently, Lord have mercy on the rest of college football. One, this is sick, all right? So this is just cool to see your dude throwing it around. I know there's no defense. I know that he's just taking a drop with a fake rush. I understand all of that. So this is cool. This is good for vibes. But if he makes throws like we saw him make in that very first clip, and he's able to consistently make the routine throws as well as the big-time throws, that's what you fear if you're the rest of college football, and that's what gives you hope, optimism, and potentially booking some college football playoff tickets if you're a South Carolina fan. Because, I mean, with his ball, with the ball in his hands, Lenor Sellers, that is, there is nobody that I trust more in college football to make good things happen when he tucks it and runs. Like, full stop. I've said it before. He gives you that feeling when he decides to go north and south with it that you only got when you were watching some of the greatest players in college football play. That's hyperbolic. It's a big statement. I'm not backing down from that. He's that special, and we saw it multiple times last year. A&M, Clemson, he's ridiculous with the ball in his hands. But if he elevates his game to a point where he's making the off-platform throws, he's rolling to his left and throwing back right downfield, and he's got Nicholas Harbor separating, and he drops it on a dime. If he's able to do that consistently, he's the best player in college football. Full stop. I mean, the guy's like, 6'3", 240, runs like a deer, can throw like that. Who's stopping that? Your podcast didn't stop if you're listening right now. YouTube's fine. I'm just waiting for someone to answer that. He is that special of a gifted athlete, of a quarterback, but if he can make those throws, there's no way to actually defend South Carolina, in my humble opinion, which then begs the question, how do you beat South Carolina if that's what you have to defend every single week? This is not me calling my shot for South Carolina to win the SEC or for South Carolina to go undefeated, but I do think it's worth at least examining the possibility that if South Carolina has the best player in college football at quarterback, they're going to be in the college football playoff discussion. They were on the bubble last year. And improve Lenor Sellers, to me, making throws like he did there with nobody playing defense, off-platform throws like that, then I don't see a world where South Carolina is just left out of the college football playoff in that discussion. So the propaganda from Lenor Sellers and that team, we love it. We appreciate it. Propaganda sometimes has a negative connotation in the world of media. Not on this show, man. Give us the propaganda. Give us propaganda in extra doses this time of the year, man. Good to see the college football world buzzing. Good to see the football being thrown. Cannot wait for fall camp because fall camp propaganda and intel is going to go absolutely crazy. But yeah, Lenor Sellers, go ahead and book that. If he's making throws like that, he's the best player in college football, and South Carolina's in the playoff. Feel more than fine saying that. So let's keep this show rolling now. We got some other things to get to. We got A&M to talk about here a little bit later. We're going to talk about a shakeup potential of what could happen at Florida State if they got to do that quarterback. But the folks in Ann Arbor, Michigan, they're feeling pretty good about what they have at quarterback right now with Bryce Underwood. And we've contributed to the discussion. We've thrown some coal on the hype train and told you we think he could be really good. I don't think it's crazy to think he could be an all-conference kind of player. But here's what I think is not being talked about nearly enough when it comes to Michigan and when it comes to Bryce Underwood and what he could be in 2025. We'll unpack that right now. But before we do that, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Michigan fans, if you want more content around your Wolverines, let us know. Best way to let us know, not the voicemail, we appreciate that, not the comment section, we appreciate that too, is by subscribing to the channel. You subscribing creates demand. Therefore, we create supply. We appreciate y'all for being dialed in. So, the Big Ten title formula for Michigan, the last couple of seasons, not last year obviously, but when they were reeling off Big Ten titles, it was J.J. McCarthy, it was Cade McNamara. It wasn't like they had this prolific passing game where they threw for 300 yards a game. In fact, I'll give you a chance to guess. What do you think the average passing yards a game was of a J.J. McCarthy-led Michigan offense, which was the most potent through the air when they were winning Big Ten titles? Okay, great, you guessed. It was less than 200 yards, right around $195, $199 is what he got to in 2023. Cade McNamara was below that. And the reason why you're able to do that is because you ran the football at such an elite level. Dude, we're not putting the ball in the air when we got Blake Corum pounding the rock for over 1,000 yards in a season. We got Hassan Haskins going for 1,300 yards. We don't need to worry about throwing the football when we can turn around and hand it to somebody and still get a tremendous gain and make you say uncle because we're just bullying you in the trenches. And so for Bryce Underwood, I think this drives home the idea you don't need him to be Superman. And it's this thing where I almost feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I'm telling you, he could definitely have a year where he's an all-conference caliber kind of quarterback for you. That's true. I'm not backing down from that. However, the formula for Michigan in 2025, I think, will still be built on the old Michigan formula of punch you in the face. You say, well, JD, yes, we love that. We appreciate that. We hear that. We receive that with open arms. But the reality is Blake Corum hasn't been in Michigan in a couple of years now. Hassan Haskins, we love that dude, but like, he hasn't worn a Michigan uniform in quite a bit now. How are we going to have a season where we can bully people in the trenches? Because last year was good, but you didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. The formula for Michigan when they were winning Big Ten championships was they were running for right around 2,000-plus yards with their backfield. Okay, can we do that in 2025? We like Jordan Marshall. We like Justice Haynes. The other formula piece here you got to add into the equation, the other variable, is Bryce Underwood and his legs. So my question, if you're a Michigan fan, do you feel like you can moneyball with Jordan Marshall, Justice Haynes, and Bryce Underwood a world where you run for in the neighborhood of 2,000 yards? It's asking a lot. I get that. But, I mean, if you want to compete for Big Ten championships, you got to do a little bit extra. My feels, I think that's possible. I don't know if I'm predicting it right now, but I think that's possible. I think that's not inappropriate to think that could happen for Michigan in 2025. So if that's the case now, you're asking Bryce Underwood to then throw for right around 200 yards a game. That feels very doable. And the biggest part of this whole conversation when you talk about how Michigan's going to approach things offensively is who's calling the plays. Chip Lindsey, different offensive scheme. It'll be a little bit more spread out. It'll be a little bit more shotgun. It'll be a little bit more, what's the right way to say this? It's not going to be unorthodox because it's an offense a lot of people run in college football. It'll be a little bit unorthodox to what Michigan fans have seen over the course of the last few years with different offensive coordinators, right? But that soul of Michigan football of we want to move you against your will, I truly believe that's still the plan. And that's where this gets a little bit complex when you talk about Bryce Underwood. The Bryce Underwood part of all this is the potential. That's the potential. But it's potential in the context of their plan. The plan is still run the football. The plan is still force you to quit. The plan is still be the toughest team in the fourth quarter. But the potential is, with that plan, with that formula, we have a dude now who's 6'4", 220 plus, and can do backflips, playing quarterback. That has a rocket for an arm. Plan plus that, okay, then how good could we be? If last year the plan wasn't even executed as well as we want it to be, I told you, no 1,000-yard rusher last year for Michigan, and we still beat Ohio State, still beat Alabama, how good could we be? We keep revisiting that same question, but I think it's worth being talked about together. So you say, well, JD, Bryce Underwood at some point does have to, live up to that number one overall player billing, doesn't he? Yeah, at some point throughout his career at Michigan, I think you'd like that to happen. But my question more so in the context of Bryce Underwood and his progress is, who is Bryce Underwood by Game 6? Because by Game 6, you play USC. When you play USC and Lincoln Riley is on the other sideline, there is a very real possibility that you will have to score with them. You'll have to score maybe in the 30s, maybe it takes in the 40s. I don't know. To do that, you probably need a quarterback who's a bit more dynamic, a bit more explosive, and an offense that mirrors that. And you also play Washington. Damon Williams, we're high on him. Do you have to answer scores there? Ohio State, does it become a game where Julian Sain and Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, they figure it out and they score some more points? You're not having a rock fight in Ann Arbor. If Bryce Underwood progresses to that level by Game 6 for Michigan, then things get really, really interesting. And then at that point, I think the Death Star is fully operational, which would be the Chip Lindsey offense. So to recap it, the plan is still punch you in the face, run the ball, 2,000 yards. Can you moneyball that between Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, Bryce Underwood? I think it's possible. Take that plan, and the excitement is the potential of what Bryce Underwood gives you in addition to that plan and all the explosive plays you get out of that and the just dynamic nature of a dude at quarterback that is a Bryce Underwood. So I'm not tempering excitement, not telling you to calm down. I'm telling you that's what's in front of you if you're a Michigan fan here in 2025. We did this on our most recent show, though. Talked about some things that could kind of shake up the college football world. Hey, if this happens, things could have a pretty substantial ripple effect from them. And a big shakeup that I think is possible here is if Gus Malzahn, the OC now at Florida State, I know, kind of weird if you're just tuning in now. Gus Malzahn no longer at UCF. He said, I'm good on that. I'll go call plays in Tallahassee for my guy Mike Norvell. Awesome. What if Thomas Castellanos, transfer portal quarterback from Boston College, now at Florida State, again, a lot of change if you're tuning in now for the first time. What if he is the equivalent for Gus Malzahn, what Nick Marshall was for him when he was at Auburn? Little college football history here. Gus Malzahn, head coach at Auburn at one point in time, once upon a time, has a quarterback by the name of Nick Marshall who ran his system, I mean, just to Mona Lisa level, perfection. It was art. Nick Marshall, when he played quarterback for Gus Malzahn, he had previously been playing defensive back for Georgia. So all this talk around Thomas Castellanos, this and, you know, all the shortcomings he had at Boston College, which are fair, which are valid, can he give you as much as a quarterback that Nick Marshall gave you as a previous defensive back in the SEC? I think this is kind of the plan for Florida State, just so we're all on the same page here. Because I, much like you, raised my eyebrow a little bit when they went and got Tommy C. Because I was like, I don't know if that's like, you know, I don't know if that's really the game changer that you signed up for if you're a Florida State fan when you brought in Gus Malzahn. I don't know if that's like the guy that got you super excited to go win the ACC in 2025. But the more you sit with it, the more you think about it, this is Gus Malzahn and Florida State doubling down on Gus Malzahn's offense. We're going to run the football. We're not going to be super complex with our scheme. We're going to do one thing, going to do it really well, and that is run the football and then have some explosive plays off of that. So let's just say that this ends up being the case, and Tommy Castellanos ends up being a version of what Nick Marshall was for Gus Malzahn at Auburn. Gus Malzahn now, by the way, at Auburn, played for a national championship. So let's dial it back even further and say that Florida State is just good. Good being in the context of what last year was. So you're winning, let's call it 7-8 ball games. The over-under for them is 7.5. It would mean that Florida State, winning 8 ball games-ish, got back to a place of neutral. All right? Now, neutral is something we've talked about a lot for Florida State. That, I think, is what you're chasing here in 2025. It's not super exciting. It doesn't maybe get you fired up. You don't paint the poster board when College Game Day rolls into town and say, get back to neutral, before the season starts. But if that happens, the biggest thing it would do for Florida State is it course corrects what last year was for you. It kind of revamps the Florida State reputation and brand, if you will. Because 2 years ago, we're talking about Florida State getting left out of the 4-team playoff and how they just got totally gypped by the committee, and that was the conversation in the college football public, and then they won 2 football games. Florida State, their stock very quickly plummeted. So if you can just revitalize optics a little bit, be huge for Mike Norvell, I think, be huge for the overall morale in Tallahassee. It also would be pretty huge for Gus Malzahn and that offense to say, okay, from a place where this team won 2 games the year before, you show up, we win 6 more games with a quarterback that got benched somewhere else in this conference. What can we do with some momentum? Because that's what I think it would establish. You would hope, if you're Florida State, it establishes a little bit of momentum for your football program. Because for Florida State, the future for them, I happen to feel like is, yes, going to be tied to the portal in a lot of ways, but I think last year was in some ways a teachable moment to say we got to probably be better when it comes to recruiting at the high school level. And so how you recruit well at the high school level is you allow recruits to feel good about the direction of your program. And when you have recruits feel good about the direction of your program, it means you're probably winning. And so my question within the 8-4 of it all, or 7-5 of it all, is there some marketable moments within that record that point to the arrow being up in Tallahassee? If you go 8-4, but you have one of those wins over a Clemson, or you go 8-4, but maybe 2 wins are against the teams in your state in Florida and Miami, we can sell that. We can pitch that. We can take that and sell it as, hey, look at how this thing is trending right now. 5-star cat, 4-star cat, we need you to come here and play for us and do some good things. Then we can go back to where we were a couple of years ago. Mike Norvell's got the blueprint, man. We've seen it. That's what you're telling recruits. We've been on the doorstep before. We just need you here to kind of solidify this foundation, and then we're off and running. We're back where we were a couple of years ago. So I do think a lot of it is getting that kind of momentum. What would that look like? Right now, Florida State, they have a top 25 recruiting class. I think if you're a Noles fan, you feel optimistic if you push yourself into that top 15 range. Just top 15. Can we find ourselves in a spot where on National Signing Day, we have a solid record, we feel good about what last year was relative to the year before, feel like we're stabilized, and we have enough talent now in this recruiting class to keep this thing pushing forward. I'm not saying you rethink your strategy when it comes to the portal. You still got to hit in the portal. And I think also with Thomas Castellanos being in this conversation, a dude for you under Gus Malzahn, that would also, I think, kind of revamp portal optics around Tallahassee. Because what last year was with DJU, we all get it, man. It was tough. And it wasn't just on DJU, but if you were to do the 30,000-foot flyover of Florida State football, you say DJU had a decent year at Oregon State, went to Florida State, and it was abysmal for all parties involved. So if I'm a portal quarterback and I'm looking at Florida State, I'm like, hey, I don't know if I want to, follow that. I don't know if I want to follow that path that a one DJU laid out. Well, if Thomas Castellanos, with where his career was before Florida State, shows up in Tallahassee, has a good year, revamps his optics, revamps Florida State's optics, I'm not saying you become like a portal destination for quarterbacks. I am saying you remove some of that anxiety that was there when DJU left Tallahassee. All right. So the biggest part of this whole thing to me, of this whole thing happening, I suppose, is yes, Thomas Castellanos has to be a guy for you. Has to make good decisions, can't turn the football over, be a dude when he decides to tuck it and run. But those Auburn teams, that Auburn team that played for a national championship, they were electric offensively because you had the quarterback in Nick Marshall that could hurt you, but you also had Trey Mason, who ran for almost 1,800 yards. You also had Sammy Coates, who was a 900-yard receiver. Are there other pieces on this roster for Florida State that can elevate to an elite caliber to push Florida State into this kind of territory? I think you look at Squirrel White. I think you look at Deuce Robinson as hopefully being guys for you on the outside. That backfield, I don't pretend to know exactly what they're going to have back there when it comes to production. We'll see. So if I'm a Florida State fan, I wouldn't set my sights on can he be Nick Marshall in terms of taking us back to a national championship kind of level. It's funny in this conversation, Gus Malzahn, I'm just now thinking about this. They ended up playing Florida State and Jameis Winston, losing the national title game. So you're well familiar with Nick Marshall if you want to go back and watch that if you're a Noles fan. Quick sidebar. Your thought process, though, should be get back to neutral. 8 wins is the sweet spot. 8 wins, you cash the over, vibes are good. Can Thomas Castellanos push you to that level? Is there enough around him to push you to that level? Because that would, I think, totally change the space-time continuum in Tallahassee and what the future could like for all the Noles and the folks watching this show. So a lot there. That'd be a massive shakeup, admittedly, but we will keep a pulse on that, and we will obviously unpack that as the year unfolds. Would hope we can talk some more Florida State this year, man. Like last year was tough. They lose in Ireland, and then things went off the rails there pretty quickly. After they lost whatever game it was, it might have been Boston College, it might have been the Memphis game. There was some point where we were just like, man, this is going one direction. There's not a lot we're talking about Florida State with on this show, unfortunately. So hopefully the good folks in Tallahassee will have more to talk about for you here this year when it comes to intrigue around Mike Norvell's squad. All right, let's finish with this, man. One more shakeup I want us to unpack together is the possibility of Texas A&M having the number one wide receiver they've been looking for in NC State transfer, Kevin Concepcion. Not Conception, not Concepcion, Concepcion, all right? That's a little accent we're working on there with saying his last name. But we'll unpack that right now. Before we do, one, make sure you're subscribed. College Football Sickos, Texas A&M fans, if you want more content around the Aggies, let us know by subscribing. This show, The Hard Count, brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Y'all that watch this show, you know I love Roback. If you're watching my stories on Instagram on the weekend or whenever I'm off the air here, usually rocking either a Roback hoodie or a Roback tee. Best fit, best feel. They're completely changing the game when it comes to comfortable, active wear. They got everyday shorts. They got some performance pants. I've told you I co-sign their hoodies as much as any hoodie in the game, so make sure you check them out. Roback.com. Use code JD for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's just JD, no periods, those 2 letters, spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code JD. I'll say this, Father's Day, right around the corner, might not be the worst idea to get dad some Roback. I'll just say that. So as I was saying, if Texas A&M has a dog in KC Concepcion as their number one wide receiver, it'd be impactful because the vibes would be great in College Station. You got a dude who can hurt you downfield and be cool highlights, and maybe Scott Van Pelt is talking about the best thing I saw this week, and it's Kevin Concepcion making some plays downfield and lighting up the scoreboard. But I think it's impactful if you're an A&M fan because of what you would pair that with, right? Last year, Noah Thomas was your leading receiver for your football team. Now he's gone to Georgia. I don't think anyone in College Station has a bad thing to say about Noah Thomas, but if he's your true wide receiver one, there is a very obvious limit to what your offense can be, and there's a very obvious limit to what A&M's offense was last year with him as your wide receiver one. Like, your leading receiver should not be tied for 28th in the conference in catches. Just goes to say. And so the trouble with A&M, or the excitement with Kevin Concepcion for me, is you could pair him with a run game that will be both nasty and dynamic. Le'Veon Moss, maybe it's because he got hurt last year, I think he's one of the best running backs in college football. He was averaging 6 yards a carry when he got hurt. If he stays in the game against South Carolina, I think that the ending to that game is a lot more exciting. Also with Marcel Reed, with him actually being your dude now going into the season, I promise you they will have a lot more quarterback run already tailored into the game plan week in and week out. That's tough for a defense now. Like second and third level, you got to trigger a lot more quickly when you got to worry about 10 tucking and running. Got to worry about Le'Veon Moss. Also, Reuben Owens, should he be healthy? He's a guy that excites you in that backfield. There's a lot of names for A&M in the backfield when it comes to running the football. Mike Elko's character, Colin Klein, the OC, his character is to be physical and punch you in the face and run the ball downhill. But when you can do that and then defenses overcommit and you got a dude that can actually make plays for you in the passing game, someone that's a circle on the scouting report kind of dude, that's hard to defend. That's very hard to defend. And it's the Kevin Concepcion part of it, plus the what he does for other players on your roster part of it in the wide receiver room. Like Terry Bussey's someone you're super fired up about if you're a Texas A&M fan. You've been hearing good things about him, how explosive he is, the athleticism. If you're worried about KC Concepcion as a defense, you give him extra attention. Guess who has less attention on them by resources? Terry Bussey. He makes more plays. So when that happens, A&M, what happens? They score more points. You score more points, you put the ball, I should say this, you put the game more on a Mike Elko defense, you should be feeling pretty good about yourselves, right? And at that point, A&M is thinking about the college football playoff, and we're having a discussion a couple of months from now saying, we told you it wasn't the logo. We told you it wasn't the Kyle Field of it all or the history. It had nothing to do with that. It was always the players in the uniforms, the coaches on the sideline. Here's why I arrive at with A&M. Going into the 2023 season, I felt a lot like LSU was very close to scoring a lot of points offensively. The question was, can Jaden Daniels just cut it loose? Because if he can cut it loose downfield, the run game's great. The Jaden Daniels with the ball in his hands, he's electric. And then what happens is Jaden Daniels does cut it loose. Now they had two first round wide receivers to get that done, so let that be known. But at that point, LSU became unstoppable offensively. I'm not saying that A&M has the same kind of output as a 2023 LSU, but I get the same kind of feeling around this year's A&M offense that I did that LSU offense. Now, there was no way to know that Jaden Daniels was going to be Jaden Daniels, but Marcel Reed, I don't question what he is as a passer pushing it downfield. I question, does he have someone on the perimeter to go get it for him downfield? And that's the reason why you went out and got KC Concepcion. That's the reason why KC Concepcion, per on three, is dealing with right around $2.5 million in NIL deals. All right? So if you can do that downfield, the run game will, I think, just explode. The defense will be phenomenal, and A&M will be in a spot where they're competing for a college football playoff. So if that's the case now, it impacts the house, that is A&M, but it impacts the neighborhood. Because A&M, you look at what they have ahead of them, I think they have 3 teams on their schedule that are going to be like college football playoff tier. What if A&M ends up popping a little bit more than we thought and they catch someone sleeping? What if they play Texas the last game of the year? And what if Texas has 2 losses? What if that's a play-in game for Texas? I'm not predicting, I'm just saying that's a possibility, and that in itself would be an electric factory when that game's played in Austin. So my expectation level around this, if this were weather, I'd dress for it. If this were a weather on the forecast, I'd say, yeah, I think this probably happens, where A&M is dynamic downfield, great in the run game, defense is awesome. It's a big reason why I'm very, very bullish on A&M in 2025. We'll give you our official college football playoff predictions here before August. Okay, so probably post SEC Media Days. I think we'll get to that, but I feel very good about A&M. I'm having a hard time telling myself they won't be in that field of 12. Not a promise, so don't hold me to that, but that's just I'm as high on A&M as I think anybody else in the world of college football as it stands right now. All right. Hey, appreciate y'all being tuned in, man. lengthy show for us today in the month of June, man. Good stuff. Cato just cutting up the lower thirds, making everything that you see here happen in addition to all the production of it all, and y'all making the show go. We are extremely, extremely grateful for it. Been seeing in the comment section a lot of people asking what this is right here. Maybe there's a full explanation we'll have here for you later in a future show. Put it simply, this is not a milk carton. This is a juice box. This is Sailor Juice, all right? Big thing for me in the world of media and in just the playing career in general. You can get a lot of places, man, if you just bring the right amount of juice, right amount of energy, effort, care factor, all those things, get a lot of places. So a buddy of mine who's a tremendously talented artist, Davis Brock, drew this up with the Sailor hat on it to make it a little more collegiate. Special affinity for Sailor logos when it comes to the college football world. Another story for another time. Got that, and the folks over at Shut hooked us up with a helmet. So this is Sailor Juice, not a milk carton. All it is just kind of how we get down on this show. We make it a point to be the most engaged, energetic, juiced up college football show on the internet, and we think that gets us pretty far when it comes to how you talk about and care about this sport, because I know that's how y'all care about the sport as well. A lot of juice on Saturdays from y'all, and we appreciate y'all bringing that to this show when it comes to the audience perspective. So again, for Kane Smith making this show happen, for y'all making this show happen, for myself and JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Stay juiced up. We'll keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.